those loops, what I'm going to say first though, contradicts what I'm going to say first, in that I'm realising that bringing forth a multitude of points doesn't assist, certainly doesn't assist anyone assisting one. I watched the video last night, someone, and there was so much in it that I wanted to say, I could have said, not too sure whether the person needed me to say it actually, though there was so much and so many points that were like, what, you know, what, I mean, I generally, even when somebody's just dealing with one point, I'm focusing on one word or one aspect of the point for comment or reaction. I suppose it's reaction, it must be reaction. Loops. And yeah, so I'm realising that I'm going to have to start making notes and sticking to the point. It says moving from the point to the video. I'm very slow learning, strangely, although I think it's down to some naive protection circuit that I haven't built into my program that allows me to be abused whilst not realising I'm being abused, and therefore I'm not abused, because abuse is very much a thing where, so when you look into it, it's what is abuse is a question first of all. And when it comes to interactive abuse, well, if you don't perceive you're being abused, even though the abuser believes they're abusing you, are you actually being abused as such? From your own perspective, I mean, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks really. Anyway, in any context, never mind this one. This naivety I have or utilise could possibly be a protection circuit. It needs investigating on top of all the other things that I need to investigate about myself, which can only be done with writing, which I'm not resisting, though I'm not doing, so therefore I am resisting. Loops, the loops I mentioned in the previous video, vlog. For the last 20 years, for the last 40 years, I can see 10-year loops that involve standing up to abusers who abuse authority. The difference here is I have now stopped my rebellion, which is where that original smoking thing at 405-year-old thing comes from. Although I haven't obviously stopped the rebellion program because I'm still smoking, or not for much longer. I've got justifications, and the justifications probably nothing more, nothing else. So I'm on a road that I set upon. Years ago, that I'm correcting slowly by I was offered weed last night. No, I don't want any because I've got to deal with me smoking if I smoke some weed. Although it was tempting, because I do like smoking weed, although it has no, I've realised it's no, well, it's of no use to me in my current application of myself as alive. No, I don't want any. I decided 2 days ago when I had some money spare, and I would normally have bought some weed to pass the time away. No, I don't want to smoke any weed for various reasons. One of them being I want to deal with my smoking habit, and if I start smoking weed, then it's a step away from dealing with my smoking habit rather than a step towards dealing with the smoking habit. So there is some proof that I am moving in the right direction. I wasn't even tempted beyond being polite to the person who were offering it me, because I have been and asked them for weed in this year even twice, and therefore they weren't offering it me for any other reason than seeing if I wanted any, because they were going getting some. And that's not about the loops I want to talk about. And so I am actually at the beginning of another loop. I realised it was point pivotal actually 2 weeks ago, just over 2 weeks ago, and it was smoking weed that made me realise it. I did smoke some weed just over 2 weeks ago, and it was point pivotal this, Anthony. If you now decide to smoke weed, you're now going to retrogressively create more issues for yourself than correcting the issues you've recognised, realised as issues that need correcting, so you can apply yourself in the ways you are speaking of. What's best for all is the way to enable us to create a world where all life can live with dignity equally. Of that there is no doubt, and an equal money system from birth until death will be the foundation for that. Point pivotal. So I'm at the beginning of a loops within loops. It's loops within loops, because I've got these 10-year loops going on that started 40 years ago, no doubt about it. And if they started 40 years ago, then surely they started 50 years ago, the first year of my life, which has got some specific relevance to my experience is as this life. And so I must utilise this time most. Well, I'm not doing it as well as I ought to, and that in itself says that I'm going to have to correct myself in 10 years if I don't deal with it now, and therefore I must deal with it now. Then I don't have to wait 10 years, or would I really have to wait 10 years? The loops are within loops, aren't they? I'm just recognising these loops, these 10-year loops I'm in. And 1991 was a time of realisation for me in that, well, it weren't so much realisation as embarking upon clearer perspective, perhaps, of the loop I was already on 10 years previous, which involved me having to leave the village I lived in, grew up in, as a consequence of those in authority abusing that authority, and the authority above them recognising that, though not willing to admit that authority could be wrong, and therefore fudging the issue, let's say. Specific details. I've got issues now with my rehousing where the local authority most definitely is still abusing its authority for the reasons that, if I get compassionate and sympathetic with them, for the reasons that the system cannot deal with the circumstances and situation it needs to deal with. So the solution is change the system, not abuse what's there, supposedly in ways to enable us to justly exist amongst each other. I'm waiting for my support worker. She'll be here in the next hour. It'll be very interesting to hear what she says about this next issue that revolves around the flat that I've applied for, that previous support worker told me was available for those who were not economically active, 40% of it. When it came up for advertising last week, it stated everybody had to be economically active to apply for it, which was not what he'd said. It was funded through money from Europe. So then it gets into this whole thing, which is why I ended up homeless in the first place, because I wouldn't use their courts to prove their laws, to prove that they were abusing the system. Why should I? I don't fucking need it. I only need it because they make me need it. So what do I do now? Here. Do I participate in their abusive ways, or do I say no and end up back on the street, which made me iller than I was already ill before I ended up on the fucking streets? Can't do that. I don't know what I'm going to do. My time's run out and I haven't made a fucking video about loops that I'm experiencing, these 10-year loops, and I've just pivotally started another one at least 2 weeks ago. Spookart, shala, come off, Thor.